Okay, um, guys, I'm going to kick off and get going. If you're wanting to ask questions, you've got the Q&A and the chat. My colleagues Stella and Oliver will be monitoring the chat, making sure that we stay on top of things. If there's anything absolutely needs to be popped into the session, they'll interrupt me and ask the questions. Otherwise, we'll leave most of the questions to the end of the session so that we don't break up the flow. So, my name's Eric Strachan, and here today to do producing a business case for PPM. We'll go through a little bit of an introduction, talk a little bit about the challenges that people find, why business cases for PPM are harder than people think. For some reason, people find it much more difficult to do a PPM business case, and we'll go into some of the reasons for that. Key elements to include in a business case, but then we'll mostly focus on the compelling elements of a business case, the things that you really need to do to get a PPM solution in particular off the line and get buy-in from management team. We'll talk a little bit about what not to do as well, and I've seen quite a few what not to do's in my time, so we'll talk a little bit about that, and then we'll do a little bit of a summary at the end. So, challenges for developing a business case. People find PPM in particular hard to match expectations and reality. It's particularly difficult because you've got a number of different stakeholders who have very varying needs, very varying problems that you're trying to solve. It's really difficult to actually satisfy each and every one of those expectations 100%. So it's important with the business case that we actually understand that and work with that process. PPM can do lots and lots of things. People try and overreach, and they try to do too much and satisfy too many stakeholders all in one go. It's really important to think about PPM tools and the solutions as a bit of a journey that you're going through, and pick those things off high priority and onwards through the priorities as you go. It's really important to make people understand that they might not be in phase one or priority number one, but they will be there and they'll get there in the end. So it's quite important to make sure people understand it's a journey. The other thing we see a lot is the benefits cases being produced based on sort of very big numbers put up in the air. So a lot of people will just say, well, I've got 1,000 projects and 10 million pounds worth of work. If I save 10% of that, then I'm going to save £1 million. Great. How? Why? What? Where? Absolutely, you can put big numbers on the table, but you need to understand how you're going to attribute that to your PPM solution, how you're going to measure it, and where you're going to get that information from. Vague benefits cases are the biggest death knell on any project, but on a PPM project in particular. If someone sees something that they can't believe, that they can't see how it's going to operate, they'll, no matter how good the business case is generally, if they can't understand those benefits and they can say, well, how am I going to know that's your solution? That's the death of that business case before it even gets going. So what does the PPM solution deliver? Well, it delivers a whole pile of different things, and this is part of the problem. You've got your scheduling, you've got your resource and cost management, you've got your risks and issues, dependencies, cost, pipeline management, strategic priority. You've got all of these different elements, and they're all interwoven together. You've also got to think about how that information feeds management information and how you're actually going to use that to control your organization. Yeah. Just looking around that circle, the different stakeholders, how are you going to satisfy a project manager versus a financial executive? How are you going to satisfy a risk manager versus a sales business requirements manager? How are you going to actually make the information sing for all of those different stakeholders? Yeah. And importantly, how are you going to prove beyond reasonable doubt that that information or that those tools that you're putting in place, that solution you're putting in place, is responsible for improving the situation for all of those different things? So why are PPM cases in particular harder than other business cases? Well, I've touched on some of this as earlier on, but if you haven't got a clear objective, if it's not clear which parts of that solution you're going to deliver when and how that's going to be engaged into the organization, if you've not got clear measures for those objectives, yeah, if you've not got clarity of purpose, because there's so much going on in a PPM tool, it's very easy just to lose people in day one. I want scheduling, I want cost management. Yeah, well, you can get both of those, but we need to work with you to make sure that happens. Key to that is making sure that you involve all the stakeholders and they understand the business case from the start. If you don't get those stakeholders involved, yeah, they won't buy into the business case. Now that's just a statement of fact, but it's also really important that they understand what they're going to get, yeah, and that they understand how they're going to get it. So getting that understanding in those stakeholders is key. Don't put the 10% on £1 billion portfolio in as your benefit case. If you haven't got solid evidence as to how you're going to deliver that benefit, don't put it in. It just undermines the credibility of the business case if there's something vague, woolly, or unattributable in your business case. You've got to be able to put your finger on it and say, I will measure this way. Costs. PPM tools can be often seen as a silver bullet. I'm going to put it in, it's going to solve everything. I'm just going to make the tool available, do a bit of training, it's all going to be cool. Because PPM integrates with so many of those different things that we saw in the diagram before, there's a lot going on. You need to make sure that any indirect or hidden costs are covered in your business case. I've seen too many business cases fall because people have gone, well, you say this is going to cost X £1,000, but I know I'm going to spend twice that on change management. I know I'm going to have to do something to the financial systems. I know I'm going to have to do all this, and you haven't included that in your cost profile, and it's going to have all of these impacts. You've got to make sure that everything is accounted for. And for goodness sake, don't ignore the risks. This is a risky enterprise. Manage those risks, identify the risks, show how you're going to stop things going wrong, yeah, before someone says, but what if it doesn't do that? Yeah? Get the risks pinned down. Key elements of the business case, key elements of a business case, key elements of a business case. They're all the same across the piece. But because you've got so many stakeholders, make sure that your executive summary covers all of the elements of the people you need to sign off on this business case. Make sure those objectives are clear and people know what they're getting, when they're getting it, and how they're actually going to be able to see the improvement. Yeah. Tangible and intangible benefits, support it with evidence, show how you're going to baseline it, show how you're going to measure the change, and explain how those numbers come about. Costs, make sure you've got them all covered, make sure it's all there, maintenance, implementation, maintenance, and change management. All the risks, make sure they're identified and clear. Timeline is realistic. Boy, have I seen way optimistic timelines in business cases for PPM. Make sure that you, even if you're spending the right amount of money, make sure that you allow time for people to absorb and to actually use the tool in reality. And make sure that every one of those stakeholders, especially the key ones, have a clear and concise stakeholder management plan. So what are the compelling elements of a business case? Well, the key parts are obviously the quantifiable benefits, and quantifiable means several things. It means that you can put pound, shillings and pence signs on it, but it also means that you can measure it. It means that you can attribute it, and it means that you can make sure that people understand where those benefits are going to arise and when. I'm going to go through the 7 items that we've got here in a little bit of detail now to give you a view as to the kind of things you need to do to understand the benefits and to get that attribution. So, improved decision making. Why does PPM improve decision making? Well, solutions, PPM solutions provide better visibility. They just do. If you've got a project portfolio and you've got no tools actually understanding that portfolio, no way of actually extracting information from that portfolio, you're not going to be able to make any kind of strategic decisions on what your portfolio is doing. I've seen organizations that have plans, but no resources. I've seen organizations that do costs, but don't have schedules. I've seen organizations that care down to the last penny how much they spend, but don't care about the schedules and how long things take. Providing information around those things so that the organization, be that middle or senior management, can make strategic decisions about them is key. So how do I measure that? Yeah. So what are management currently looking at? So if I'm putting a PPM solution, what do they currently use? Have they got an old PPM solution? Are they looking at stuff in spreadsheets? Are they getting manual reports? What information do they currently have? Does that give them the levers they need to control how the projects are run, which projects are run, and when? Yeah, and how current is that information? And what are we going to add? So if we can look at that information and say, these are the gaps, how are we filling those gaps? And therefore, how are we going to measure those, the improvement in that management information? Enhanced resource utilization. So PPM tools, if used correctly, will allow you to optimize the allocation of resources across time. I say if used correctly. I've seen lots of organizations that put PPM tools in, but don't really think through how the human and material resources are actually going to be dealt with in the tools. So assuming that we're going to do this correctly, we're going to provide information about the allocation across projects. We know how much time people are going to be spending on projects. We know how much time and material and cost are going to be used by those projects. How do we measure the change? So what's the current resource utilization? Do we know how much time people are working on chargeable work or on productive work? Or if we're working in an organization that's got an internal marketplace, how do we know how much time people are spending on project work versus BAU? Yeah. Have we got a baseline measurement of what those things are? I've worked again with organizations where when you press on that one, it turns out, yeah, we kind of know it's sort of 70, 80% utilization. How? Well, we kind of know we deliver this amount of projects and therefore we backtrack. You need to understand which teams are providing what. Some teams might be entirely BAU, might never do any project work at all. Some teams might be a little bit more or total. You need to understand what that is. And then you need to put a measure in place to show how that is going to improve with the tool. Risk reduction. Not specifically about risk management, but more about how we minimize the risks associated with a project execution. So if you are not planning, if you don't have a PPM solution and you are not planning for things to go wrong, you're going to be hit with issues out of nowhere. So do we currently know how often risks become issues? How often things that we've recorded as risks become issues? Or how often issues just appear out of the blue? Really good addition to a business case is that project that everybody knows in the organization that went completely wrong and pear-shaped because an issue appeared that we should have known, but we didn't because we hadn't thought it through. Yeah, there's one of them in every organization, usually, that I've worked with. Taking that and using it as a case study for why the PPM solution will actually minimize lost cost is a great way of actually supporting a business case. Do we mitigate risks? Do we actually log risks? Do we have risks in place currently that we put on the shelf and gather dust? Do we actually have any understanding of whether they're managed? And if we do we actually act on those risks? Do we actually continue to mitigate risks while having them recorded? Often the answers to those things are no, or not very well. If you can gather that information and baseline the risk profile of your organization, you can then show how that can be improved very easily. Increase project success. Obviously, it's a nice statement. With better planning, monitoring, control, projects are more likely to be completed on time and within budget. What does better mean? Yeah. If we've got a planning method at the moment and that planning method works, yeah, we're going to improve how. Yeah. If we don't have a consistent planning method, if we don't have a consistent monitoring method, we don't have information available to the organization on the progress of projects through time, then we are much more likely to be able to generate information that shows that we are improving with better planning and monitoring and control the outcomes of projects. So what is the average project overrun? Do we know? Have we got a baseline of projects? If we don't have that information, and if we don't have a PPM solution, we probably don't, can we case study one or two projects? Can we say, this is a project that's been running for the last 2 years. We started off with a budget of X. It is now running at a budget of X plus Y. Therefore, we can come up with a clear view of what the average project variance is across those projects that we can measure. If we can get that average overrun, if we can get that information, we then need to be able to say, okay, so we're going to have all of the portfolio measuring. Instead of 1, 2, 3, 10, 20, 40, 50%, we're going to change the methodology so that projects are all monitored. And therefore, we're able to say we can take some of that project variance and reduce it. Projects will always go wrong or go slower or spend more because they do. It would be a manufacturing plant if everything went perfectly every single time. The key with a PPM solution is you are improving the planning, monitoring, and control, not making it perfect. So what proportion of that project overrun could have been avoided if we'd had earlier information? Alignment with strategic goals or outcomes. If you've got a good PPM solution, you can align projects with what the organization wants to achieve. Do we make ice cream? No, we don't make ice cream. Well, why are we doing a project that is all about ice cream? Well, it's going to make us £1 million. Yeah, but do we want a project that makes ice cream that's going to make us £1 million? We need to understand how things get pushed through the front door and then how we prioritize those items so that we get the best bang for our buck out of the portfolio. Okay, we need to ensure that items are aligned to those strategic objectives. So, do we currently know what projects are aligned to what strategy? Yeah, and if we do we? How does that actually manifest when we get to that front door? So how do we use that to decide what projects are going to get done? Now, you might use other factors as well, like the amount of resource we've got available in a particular area, the risk profile, et cetera, the costs. You might have lots of other factors too. But do we know and can we demonstrate back through that full line of sight to the company strategy, through the OKRs and everything else, can we see how those projects are aligned? And therefore, when we've got too much to do we know which projects go to the bottom of the list because they have the least bang? Yeah, they have the least alignment to that strategy. Yeah, can we actually get that visibility? So, first of all, the tool, that PPM tool, will provide that front door monitoring that gives you that solution, if well implemented. How do I actually decide that that's improved that alignment? Well, first of all, I can see, if I didn't have alignment before, and I do now, I can get that. Indeed, when I actually align my portfolio, I may find that some of the projects that people thought were really big and important, when we actually look at them, they don't really align terribly well to the strategy. And how did that happen? Well, maybe someone spoke loudly and confidently, maybe a bad decision was made. But you can look at the portfolio post the alignment in the PPM tool, and you can measure how much effort is going into delivering that strategy and how much is actually going to things that are not really that important. Better forecasting and planning. Clearly, PPM tools are designed to give you better project forecasts and investment planning. It's kind of like what we were talking about before, but there's a flip side that I wanted to point out. Clearly, if we can get our cost forecasting or time forecasting better, we can baseline what we've got. We can measure against the changes that we've made. That's great. Even if you're an organization and you say, actually, we underspend. I've worked with organizations that's underspend by millions on their portfolio every year and pat themselves on the back and say, this is brilliant. We're managing so well that we've underspent by 10, 20, 30 million pounds. Aren't we great? Yeah, it's better than overspending, definitely. But your organization has tied up that 20, 30, 40 million that you've just spoken about ready to be invested in the project portfolio that you guys are delivering. They could have invested that portfolio differently. They could have invested that money differently. They could have paid people more money in their wages. They could have run more projects. They could have used that money to effectively develop the business in some other way. So even if you're underspending, there is a cost to doing that. So if you can work out what your over and underspends across your portfolio currently are, then you can make a very compelling business case for the numbers that you're going to achieve if you successfully implement your tool. So what is the current total project cost variance, positive or negative? What does this actually cost the organization? I know organizations that borrow development money at the beginning of the financial year and have it sitting in a bank account waiting to be spent. There's a cost to that because you're paying interest on that money. Public services, things like that, if you are allocated a large amount of money at the beginning of the year, that money's going to be ring-fenced. It's going to sit there. And if it's not invested, it will have a cost. I'll go back to the very first bit there, though. This is still better than overspending, still better than making sure that you haven't spent too much. Okay, faster project execution. Clearly, if you can plan better and coordinate better, use your resources better, use your cost profile better, you can get projects delivered quicker. Yeah, products brought to market are quicker, are obviously going to earn more revenue. Changes made so that things are made more efficient or implemented so that we do things quicker, you're going to save cost. So how much money are we currently spending on these products? How much revenue would we be making if these products were in market? And if I can demonstrate that I can deliver those 1 month, 2 months, 3 months earlier, then you can do the maths. So quantitative benefits, you've got a clear set of things that you can draw on. You need to baseline where you currently are. You need to clearly align those benefits to the objectives of the project. I use a phrase, managing projects for benefit delivery. If you have a clear understanding of your benefits and how the tools, the objectives of your tools are going to deliver those benefits, you can align the schedule of delivery according to that benefit. So the higher the benefit, the more priority that it gets in the delivery of the tool. So if you can rearrange your schedule so that you can deliver more sooner, yeah, you can provide that information into the business case and demonstrate step by step how much benefit is going to be delivered over time, and therefore how you're going to achieve payback for the investment of the PPM tool. As well as the quantitative, we also have qualitative benefits. All right. These don't have pounds, shillings, and pence items, but they can still be measured. We can still demonstrate them. So it's very, very rare that you would have even a qualitative benefit which we can't measure. And actually, I would be inclined to just include those as a statement somewhere rather than a benefit. If you have something that you think you're going to improve, but you can't measure it, then I probably wouldn't include it. It's too woolly. I wouldn't have it as part of the business case. So, for example, improve customer satisfaction. Well, I can't put a pound, shillings and pence item on that. I could try, but it's very difficult, and it's very difficult to qualify it. But I can certainly send out customer satisfaction. I can see increase in customer loyalty, returns. I can see whether or not customers are happy to reuse our services. So I can measure that from surveys or indeed from repeat business. Enhanced employee morale. If you don't feel as though you're on a runaway train, if you don't feel as though you're constantly picking up one tool and then dropping it and picking up another tool, if things feel smoother and better organized, yeah, and you're not being shouted at every 5 minutes in project reviews, then job satisfaction improves. Yeah. Again, not something I can put pound, shillings and pence. I could have a go at retainment rates and how much it costs to replace people, but difficult to attribute again. But I can measure and say, do you think that your job in terms of PPM is improving or getting better or worse? So I can measure it. You've got better team collaboration. Again, it's hard to put a pound, shillings and pence value on it, but you can see how people are talking. You can see how dependencies between organizations across a PPM solution are being delivered better and more consistently. And then the last one, better decision making, kind of ties into a lot of that am I in control bit that I talked about right at the beginning. Better decision it's hard to quantify, but I can see where decisions are being made. I can see if the right projects are being selected at the front door. I can see when risk management converts into issues. I can see when mitigations have kept a risk from appearing. I can see when resources have been moved from one project to another because of conflicting priorities, or I can see the number of projects that have not been cancelled or put on hold because we have a better understanding of how the portfolio operates. So I can see those things and I can show them, can't necessarily put a pound, shillings and pence. So remember, just because an item can't be costed, you can still have a qualitative item. You can show how it's going to be measured. You can demonstrate that you are absolutely being able to show that this isn't a woolly benefit. This isn't something that's just a bit vague. This is something you're going to measure. You're just not putting pound, shillings and pence on it. I say the key to this is really, if you can't measure it, by all means mention it in an appendix or somewhere else, but don't put it in your benefits case. I mentioned in the middle of there somewhere, if you can get a project that's failed in the past, or a project that's maybe everyone knows of a project that went horribly wrong, or was a horrible project to work on because, if you can take one of those and quantify that understanding, they make really, really good examples in business cases. They support business cases extremely well. But if you don't have one, other organizations have implemented PPM solutions. Other organizations, we work with hundreds of organizations, and many of them are willing to talk about the improvement, the changes, how they measured their business case, how they actually delivered quality improvements, how they delivered a cost improvement. Yeah. So they, in those cases, business case studies can be used either as a secondary form of support for your business case, or they can be used as a primary case. And I say I would only do that if it was something in my organization, if it was a project inside my organization. But you can use case studies of things that haven't worked in the past, or even things that worked but only worked because of the sheer dint of effort from individuals and what impact that had on those individuals. So you can use case studies and examples of stuff to support a business case. And that works really well, especially if it's a well-known project that people would instantly recognize. The other organizations, we can help you with that, but I would tend to use that as a backup to your own measures and benefits. So those are the things you need to do. Those are the things you can do to make sure that you've got the right things in place. So what don't I do? Well, I've seen way too many business cases where they've used the shotgun approach to benefits and the business case as a whole. I've seen way too many things that if I put in everything I can think of into a business case, be that objectives, be that benefits, be that whatever, I'm more likely to get it approved. Really no, keep the business case clear, only put stuff that's attributable to this project into the business case, make sure that you've got a way of measuring that, and ditch the other stuff. It might, volume and quantity may feel like the way to go, but you can pick holes in quantity. You need quality. You need to make sure that business case has the best and clearest examples of benefit. And PPM's jargon, but avoid jargon that senior management, senior executives, anybody like that won't understand. Don't talk about detailed process and policy. Try and keep it at a level that people will understand. Point I make there, it's so much better to have a small number of clear, concise, measured benefits than having that scattergun of dozens and dozens across the piece. That will just switch people off. Going back to that very first statement, you have diverse stakeholders. You just do. From senior executive to planner, from people in finance to people in projects, to BAU staff to delivery experts, from BAs to technical people. These stakeholders are so diverse, you absolutely can't ignore their input, but you really have to make sure that you've got a clear communication plan and you've clearly outlined the benefits and importance of the PPM solution to each and every one of them. How it's going to impact them, what's in it for them, applies to the senior stakeholders as much as it applies to the guys on the shop floor. Way too many times I've seen senior stakeholders catered to, lots of information to those people, but the middle management, the shop floor are ignored and they vote with their feet. If they can't see what's in it for them, if they don't realize that this is actually going to make their life easier, they'll quickly vote with their feet and you won't get a satisfactory outcome. You must show the key information for everybody. Yes, key stakeholders have to understand the benefits, but they also need to understand what it's not going to do, and that they're not getting per se the nirvana to solve every one of their problems. You need to make sure that their understanding is accurate of what's achievable, and then support it with benefits, so that when someone says, oh well, will this actually do that, you can show them how. And the how's the point of this slide. You've got to provide evidence, measure baseline performance, understand what's currently happening, spot the gaps, explain how you're going to fill those gaps, generate surveys, produce case studies for previous projects or things that have happened in the past. But measure, 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 put a baseline in place and show how your measurements will prove early that you are making a difference. Yeah. There is no point in having, and I'm surprised it's taken me this long to say this, no point in having a business case and benefits case that says invest this X number of pounds in a PPM solution, and you'll get a benefit in 2 years' time. You need to demonstrate how you're going to measure incremental improvements quickly and soon so that you can demonstrate that benefit is actually coming down the line. You're not talking about complete payback here in weeks, months, but demonstrating that the improvement is happening so that you can show how, when everything is in place, you'll attain the benefits that you're looking for. Baseline, yeah. Use that improvement, that early improvement, to keep confidence growing and to not lose people on day one. Yeah, it's really important that is shown and keeps getting shown. All right. So CPS have helped a large number of people through this journey. Over the years, we've helped hundreds, small and large, organizations through this journey. We've helped people develop business cases. We've helped people actually deliver those business cases, and we've helped people embed their solutions in their organization so that they provide benefit and they can be seen to provide benefit. We offer a short PPM discovery, circa a few days, to help you actually embed information in that business case, to get a business case structured the right way, actually get the measures that help those benefits that we've been through, and help you get the right measures for your organization. All of those benefits won't be applicable to all of you there. They'll all have different outcomes, or you'll have different levers of control, and we can help you actually understand which is appropriate to you. All right, you can contact myself, Ollie, or use the contact addresses that you see there on the screen. We will be providing a follow-up to this webinar, so you will get a recording of the webinar sent through, and we will touch base just to see what you thought of the webinar, and we'll follow up with you to just see if there's anything that we can do to help you. Questions?